Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. and today I'm reviewing Cretaceous Rails from Spillcraft Games. Cretaceous Rails is a 2-to-4 player mid-weight Euro game with worker placement, with tableau building, with a little bit of pick up and deliver, sort of a whole lot of things mixed into one very rewarding experience. This is a crowdfunding project. This is on Kickstarter. I'll have a link to it down below, and everything you see here, arts, components, rules, all that stuff subject to change. Like I said already, this is a 2-to-4 player game. I don't believe there's a solo. I apologize. This is a 1-to-4 player game. I believe BGG says 2-to-4, but this is a 1-to-4 player game. I have not played through the solo mode of this, but Cretaceous Rails is going to have you across 4 rounds of play trying to take actions to basically build up your luxury dinosaur tourism kind of industry. You're wandering back into the past, you're exploring the Cretaceous area, Cretaceous period, and you have dinosaur theme parks and amusement and tours and all that, more the tourist part, as you take your various tourists, wander around the island, going location to location, as you build out your networks, as you gather dinosaurs to be able to bring them back and use those to craft various cards over here in the game, various resort cards that you're going to have in the game. You're trying to ultimately build up your engine to accomplish that. To that end, there's a few core concepts you're going to want to have in play. First of all, the game takes place over 4 rounds. You're doing everything across 4 rounds, and you're going to be doing so using worker placement with this little grid over here. Whenever you place a worker, you're going to take it and place it between 2 spots and take the actions between those spots. The next player can go ahead and go, but they have to take a different location. They can't go to the same spot. Maybe they can go ahead and take that spot over there, and then take those 2 actions, and slowly but surely the grid will fill up, but you're always taking 2 different actions, and that grid is shuffled round to round. So it's always going to be a new configuration in each of the rounds. Past that, there are 5 core actions on the grid. I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 core actions on the grid that you're taking, and those actions all relate to how you're building out your network. Before we get into that though, it's important to understand how you score points in this game. And to that end, you're going to score points from 2 primary areas. You're going to score points from having dinosaurs. Specifically, as you go through the game, you have the opportunity to collect dinosaurs. We'll talk about how you do that soon, but you're going to be collecting dinosaurs, and then those dinosaurs are worth points depending on how high your interest level from your tourists is in that dinosaur. You're going to have the opportunity to take tours in the game, where as you do so, you're going to move up your marker, increasing the points that that dinosaur is worth at the end of the game, but specifically, the dinosaurs are going to be worth that many points if you use it towards building a resort card, and it's only worth half as many points if it's simply on your player board. So again, there's kind of a few things going on there. You want to collect dinosaurs, you want to ramp up their points, and then ideally you want to use them towards building resort cards. That's going to be a large chunk of points you get in the game. The other chunk of points you get in the game are going to be from these various resort cards that have also scoring things on the bottom. You're going to have various abilities, we'll talk more about these shortly, but on the bottom of each card there's various scoring metrics. Get a point for every palm tree, get a point for every tourist, get a point for every palm tree, and you're going to have these 5 different areas that you're scoring for palm trees, for tourists, for the number of rails you have across the map, for the number of train cars you have over here, and then as well as the number of volcanoes and these tourist spots that you are connected to on the grid. And so all of those are going to score not intuitively on their own, not inherently on their own, but rather they're going to score based on you gathering a bunch of these cards and then seeing what your scoring multiplier for each thing is. So you're trying to get these cards for a whole bunch of reasons. You're trying to get them based on what they cost, because dinosaurs score more if they're contributing to resort cards. You're going to want to get them based on the multiplier, and then how you're going to try to focus on expanding and getting as much as you can as possible out of the multiplier, and then just as importantly, they're also going to have abilities on them, and we're going to talk about those soon. So that's how you score. So you want dinosaurs, you want them on resort cards, you want to move the track, and you also want to get these resort cards and then accomplish those various things. To that end, we're going to have the 5 core actions of the game. And the 5 core actions, like I talked about already, well, I referenced them already, these are going to be the 5 actions you have. And one of the first ones you're going to want to talk about is building rails. When you take this action over here, you can build rails. You can build 2 rails, starting from your home base and expanding around the grid. You can branch and fork as many times as you want, but you do have to connect somewhere back to your original destination. That's going to be the rail action, and that's important because almost everything else you do is based on the network that you build, and of course one of the scoring multipliers is how big your rail track is. From there, you're going to want to go ahead and clear brush from the various areas around the board. That's going to be this chainsaw action. That's going to let you clear these various trees from the spots, which are important because, first of all, you cannot capture dinosaurs until you've cleared that out. You can't find them, you can't see them, so you have to first get rid of the shrubbery before you can capture a dinosaur. And then additionally, when you take a tour, you're only going to get rewarded for dinosaurs your tourists can see, and they can't see through the brush. So you're going to take that action. That action is going to let you remove 1 shrubbery and place it onto a train car where you will have to drop, let's put it over here so you can see it over here, place it onto a train car, but you will have to drop that off, or alternatively, once you get, if you have a limited number of train cars and you have to fill up, you have to empty those train cars before you can continue to fill them out. So you only start with 2 spots, you can't use your engine, which means it's going to fill up very quickly, and you'll have to take actions to empty it, or if you wait to the end of the round, you can empty it that way as well. That's going to be 2 actions. So we have building trains, we have clearing the shrubbery, then we have taking a tour. Taking a tour is over here, this action, where you're going to grab a tourist that's connected to a spot. You're going to see all the areas they're connected to along the way. So for example, if we took this tourist from this spot, we would look along the pathway and we'd say, oh look, we have one green dinosaur, but that one has shrubbery in the way. We have another green dinosaur, that's 1, and then these 2 are all blocked by shrubbery. So this green tourist wants to see green dinosaurs, there's only 1. Fortunately, you're connected to volcanoes, and volcanoes always count as wild for the sake of tours, so that's going to be 3, and you're going to move up your star 1, 2, 3, paying trees every time you cross one of these black lines. So there are little more obstacles in your way as you try to ramp up that track. That's going to be how you take a tourist, and then a big part of that is you have to take that tourist, and you have to put it into one of your train cars as well, so you have to have space for that tourist. And that's going to be the take a tour action. That's going to be how you ramp up your dinosaurs. It's going to be how you earn tourists, which are also a cost for cards. So our trees, by the way, trees, dinosaurs, and tourists are going to be costs for the resort cards, which moves to action 4 over here. Action 4 is going to be capturing a dinosaur. You simply take a dinosaur that's not blocked by any shrubbery, and you put it onto a train as long as you have availability for it. And then action 5 over here is going to be the action 4, whatever we're up to over here, is going to be gathering cards. With this action over here, you're going to look at this board and take any 2 cards from this board over here. This board will clear between rounds, and you're going to try to pick cards that benefit you in some way, which we have talked a little bit how they benefit you, but that brings us to the last action, which is building resort cards. The last action over here is building resort cards, and that's going to allow you to build cards, as many as you can afford to pay for, but only on 1 level at a time. So with a single action, you can build 3 on level 1, or 3 on level 2, or 3 on level 3, assuming you have the resources to pay for them, and also the structural support. You can't build 3 on level 2 until you have 3 on level 1, so you're going to work your way up there, and the reason that's important is because most of the cards get stronger depending on what level you're at. This card over here has a penalty every time you benefit from it, but that penalty is lower the higher you go. This card over here lets you capture more dinosaurs when you take a capture dinosaur action. You can capture an additional 1 dinosaur if it's on level 1, 2 on level 2, and 3 if it's on level 3. So ramping these up gets tremendously more powerful as you can do so, but getting a bunch of level 3 cards in play requires work, effort, and energy because you have to acquire the resources and build other cards along the way. And those are going to be the actions that guide you. You're trying to figure out how you can get cards. And these cards over here, they're all crazy. They give you different things. Here you can have, 1, 2, or 3 more train cards as a one-time bonus right away when you build it. Over here, every time you take a tour, you can actually unload, get a free unload action at the end of the tour. In general, unloading is going to happen at the end of the round, or you can always give up any action in order to unload, or you can benefit from a certain card that will let you do so. There are cards that will let you capture or take tours on dinosaurs that are otherwise blocked by shrubbery that you can get through them depending on their abilities. There are a ton of cards and abilities that break all the game's rules or make the core actions in the game more powerful. That's what you're doing. You have those core actions, I think 5 or 6, whatever the number was, of core actions you're taking. Every single round you're going to place 4 workers, effectively your executives. You're going to be placing them on this grid, each one taking 2 actions. So effectively you have 8 actions you take every single round. That's 32 actions in the game, but those 32 actions are going to get increasingly more powerful as you build those resort cards, as you put dinosaurs into those resort cards to score, trying to be mindful of the cards, of how they add to your scoring multiplier, what you're doing in the game, and then also trying to just move up your dinosaurs on those tracks, and ideally using them for those resort cards because they are worth more if you actually put them where the people want to see them. Rinse and repeat across 4 rounds of play, and that is basically how you play Cretaceous Rails. This brings me to the review, starting off with ease of play. The game is fairly straightforward. There may have been a lot to go through over here, and I probably went into more information than you need to understand for the sake of a review, but this game is fairly straightforward as far as the core actions. It's worker placement. The core actions are all very simple to understand. I think taking a tour might be one of the most complicated ones because it's a little bit different than capturing a dinosaur or clearing the brush, but to a certain extent it's the same thing because you're getting a tourist, but there's more happening. There's one action that's complicated. The rest of them are fairly straightforward, very easy to cover. Most of them are on this little handy dandy little play rate over here. You have them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's only 5 actions, no 6 play rails. There are 6 actions over there, but you're going to have all the actions listed over there. They are missing a bit of information, so you do want to be mindful of reading the rules as opposed to just this, but this has most of what you need. The game is fairly straightforward. The complexity comes from actually understanding how to proceed further. This is a game, the first time I played this game, we played for like 25 minutes and we're like, let's reset and start that again, because there was so much we understood after playing. There is complexity, but the complexity is far more in the decision making than in the rules. The rules we were clear on, it's just we dove in and we're like, oh, well, I guess we should have done that differently. Oh, I guess we should have done this differently. So there's a lot to grok, but not in the actual complexity of the rules themselves. Game length will vary based on how well you know the game, based on the player count. I'd say you're looking at around 90 to 120, 90 to 120 minutes to play the game, generally speaking. As far as what I like, don't like, and can see others not liking, starting off with what I like, which is the worker placement, dual placement option over here. It just adds, it's a nice little twist, and it just adds enough extra complexity of things to think about as far as how you place, because you're not just thinking, normally in worker placement, you're thinking, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do that. Over here, you're thinking, well, I want to do this and this, but I can't, so I'm going to do this and this. That might be a better trade-off. But honestly, even though I don't want to do that right now, there's a double rail action, and if I take a double rail action early in the game, that actually might be really helpful, and if I don't take it, someone else will take it, maybe I should stop them. There's just a drop more of an interesting decision-making going on with the dual worker placement, so I like that mechanic, I like that principle, and I like the way it's been done as far as how the grid goes. Past that over here, there are multiple paths to victory, and there are multiple paths to victory as you go through it. There's a lot to think about and to consider as you go through trying to figure out how you're going to optimize, and those resort cards are going to play into that a tremendous amount, and I love the resort cards, primarily because every single resort card in this game feels so ridiculously broken in such a good way. The cards feel broken because it lets you feel like it's so powerful to get so much done. Because the idea that you have a capture a dinosaur action that is 4 times as powerful, or 3 times powerful. Instead of capturing 1, you can capture 4 dinosaurs. If you get to that top level, you're doing so much more by building that card. It just magnifies what you're doing in the game. That's true for all actions. Every action has that. Every card has something that breaks the game, but you actually have to build them at that level, and you can't build everything. There's only 4 rounds, only 32 actions. There's not enough time. But the cards feel so broken in how they enable your pathways towards victory that it really, again, going back to the last game I played, I had one player who was dominating the rails, building entirely across the map, being able to get anywhere they want, which led them to having very strong tours. The flip side of it is I was just taking all the shrubbery off the map, and they kept on getting blocked by the fact that there wasn't enough shrubbery for them to accomplish their goals, while I was capturing 4 shrubbery in a single action. The game gives you those kind of weird pathways where you're going to find the way that you are better or special at the game, while looking at your opponent feeling like, I can't believe how much you're getting done, because they have their own thing that they're good at. The resort cards are easily one of my favorite parts of the game, and the work and effort you put into building them and then being able to capitalize and benefit from them throughout the course of the game is incredibly rewarding. The powerful resort cards are just, it's a huge part of the game experience for me, and the fact that there's like 3 different things going on, the point scoring, the actual ability, and then being able to place your dinosaur on them so they score, there's a lot to min-max to consider across the entire deck of cards that you're going through. The game in general has a very solid table presence. Just the way this all looks to begin with, and the way it slowly uncovers as you start taking things off the board, it has a very strong table presence that's very fun to see it, not just see it on the table, but to see it develop as you go through it. I also like the character cards. I didn't talk about this in how to play, but there's a few character cards over here that give you an asymmetric ability to the characters. I love these. I definitely want to see more of these, as well as possibly goals or other things that slightly shift up the experience. But honestly, the dual worker placement grid combined with the tons of resort cards you're going to have in the game will already give you a lot of things to think about in the game. This is a game that it feels tight at first, but as you go through it, in the 4 rounds of play, round 1 it feels like just pure setup, round 2 feels like solidifying, and rounds 3 and 4 feel like you're executing on the things that you were doing well, on the pathways towards victory that you were better at as you went through it. It's just a very crunchy and rewarding experience. As far as what I can see, as far as what I don't like in the game, first of all, the concern for balance is a little bit present. One thing I've seen across my plays of the game, and this is one of the things I'm always mindful of ever critiquing balance based on a handful of plays compared to the who knows how many plays onto there. So I'm going to say it as my own perception of balance compared to anything else, and it may be intentional, honestly, but dinosaurs seem to be the dominant thing that will score you the most points. You can get a lot of points from building out these cards, but they just simply don't compare to maxing out 1 or 2 dinosaurs and being able to build those into your park. You can score 80 points for a single dinosaur color. Forget all the dinosaurs if you do it right. And 80 is just an arbitrary number. It's a number I've seen done. I'm sure you can get even higher. But in general, capturing dinosaurs and ramping them up the track, the sheer amount of points that they are worth by putting them onto resort cards, it feels like you have to focus on that. You have to get the right dinosaurs. You have to ramp up those tracks. And then everything else is kind of secondary. Now, again, that might be by intent. I mean, this is a dinosaur-themed game. Capturing dinosaurs and putting them to resorts may be the focus intentionally. But I almost wish it was a little bit pulled back and other areas were a little bit more powerful so that it felt a drop more like there were more areas areas to push yourself towards, versus right now it feels like you have to focus on dinosaurs, and you also have to do well at the other things too, because it will matter, but dinosaurs are the core meat of this game. Secondly, I'll say that the two-player balancing, and again, this is a prototype, it's worth noting if whenever you watch this review in the future, this may well have been addressed already by the time you play this game, but for me, at least in the prototype, 2 players felt less tight than other player counts. And I still enjoyed it at 2 players, I want to be clear, I still enjoyed this at 2 players, but it definitely felt like a better, tighter, possibly more competitiveness going on at 3 players, or 4 players for that matter. In general, in the game, you have a few things going on. You have the board over here, which is going to have more tiles. Right now it's actually set up for 2 players, but you are going to have more tiles if you are playing it at 3 or 4 players, but the nature of the way the tiles progress outwards means 2 players, you can easily just separate, and even right now with the way we have this over here, you can have 2 players exploring different routes and not needing to get each other's way as much. Versus 3 and 4, yes, you'll have the extra train to get to on the board, but you'll have to snake out from the central area, which will give you more opportunities to get in each other's way. Also in 2 players, in general in the game, the way you place trains down is you could have 2 trains on the same pathway. On the same pathway, you could have 2 trains, but you can't have 3. And from what I can see, that's not adjusted for player count down to 2 players, so you still have 2 players being able to share it, meaning there's no blocking at all at 2 players, versus there is blocking at 3 and 4 players. Additionally, the placement grid, in general, that game, it just feels much tighter at higher player counts. At 2 players, it doesn't feel as tight. Now again, I still enjoyed the game at 2 players. I played it at 2 players, and I think it's still very, very strong. I just think it's much more competitive at higher player counts, to the point that 3 players, again, in general in these games, I tend to find myself going towards 3 players as my favorite player count. A little bit of extra interaction, a little bit of not so much as extra downtime, the extra social element. I very often find that 3 players is one of my golden sweet spots. That's true here as well. It's still good at 2, but I just think 3 and more is going to be where the game shines. As far as what I can see others not liking, few small things. First of all, the first 2 rounds are incredibly tight as far as your economy. I touched upon this already, but you're going to start off with a handful of cards and the promise of all these things you can do, but you have to build those cards first, and it's not easy the first rounds of play. You're going to start with a few resources, and you have to try to get those resources, but it feels so inefficient to get those resources because you haven't built up the things that make your actions more efficient yet. And so the first 2 rounds of play are going to feel very tight. The first one incredibly tight, second round a little tight, and 3 and 4 seems to be where all the stuff you've been working towards start building up and you start seeing your engine shine. I'll say in general, along with that, you can't get everything done. This is a game where there's so many ways to optimize, so many ways to get more powerful. You will not get as much done in this game as you want. Your first game you're going to get into, you're going to get to that last round of play, and you're going to be like, I thought I'd be able to get more done. I thought I'd be able to capture like 4 more dinosaurs. I thought I'd be able to build 2 more resort cards. I just thought I would get more done. Even with all the powerful things built up, you'll still find yourself just crunching for actions that you need to get things done, which may not be your jam. And then lastly, I'll say that as visually delightful as this game is, and it is visually delightful to have this board start off and then develop, it can be a little messy at times too. It can be a little hard to see, oh, you know, I thought I could take a tour for this dinosaur, but there's a little strawberry token behind it that I just happen to not see from my player angle. There's enough going on here that it's not always easy to see everything at a glance. Not the end of the world, or trains for that matter. Very often dinosaurs will obfuscate trains. You may not realize you didn't have a train to one location or another. Small little nitpicks, but it can be a little hard to see, as especially early game when things are still completely all over the place. As things get taken away, opens up a bit, but it is a little bit much going on the board. As far as final thoughts on Cretaceous Rails, overall, I really enjoyed this game. Euro games are very fascinating for me because they have to fall into that sweet spot. If a game is too light, then it's just not rewarding enough in the decision space. And if it's too meaty, if it's too heavy, very often I feel like, listen, there's only so much mental effort I want to put into getting that one victory point. And so games are often like, I will find myself in this genre of either criticizing a game for being a little too light or criticizing a game for being a little too much. And criticizing might be the wrong term, but saying the game is not as much for me for one of those 2 reasons. And Cretaceous Rails very much falls into that sweet spot of games I like. Stefan Feld or, why am I blanking at any other designer under the sun? Stefan Feld and 7,000 other designers who I can't think of at this moment, who do fall into a sweet spot of Euros that I do appreciate and enjoy, and this one very much hits that spot. The game is very tight. Those first rounds, there's so much going on. You have to get your resources, you have to make perfect decisions. But as the game enters those later rounds, you start feeling ridiculously powerful, and it's very rewarding. But while feeling ridiculously powerful, you still can't get everything done. It kind of captures both ends of the spectrum for me. It lets you feel like you can do a ton, and it lets you feel like the things you're doing are broken, but you still cannot do everything you want to do, and that's a good mix for me. I like that mix because it feels rewarding without being too constricting. The gameplay is incredibly simple to teach, and yet mentally it's complex to actually execute on. Overall, I've really enjoyed this one. Those resort cards are just a whole deck full of cards that I want every single one, and you just can't. You're going to build a handful of cards. I mean, over here, 7 cards, this is not an unreasonable amount. You can build more or less than this in the game, and so it's not an unreasonable amount of cards to end with from a deck full of 100 plus cards, I think it is. And so there's so much going on here, and it's so much fun to go through that. It's rewarding, at least for now. I'm curious to see how it'll iterate over time. I'm curious to see how it holds up for me, but right now, there's so much more to explore within the game, and there's so much more room to optimize and to get better at, and I'm really enjoying where it's at the moment. For right now, this is a 4 out of 5 for me. I like it a lot. I have some small complaints or critiques around things, like, again, the dinosaur thing is the biggest thing for me. I kind of wish the dinosaurs were scaled back a bit so that they were still important, but you could abandon them a drop, as opposed to right now, it really feels like you have to focus on them. But past that, I really strongly enjoy Cretaceous Rails from Spielcraft Games. As far as other game recommendations, first of all, Dinosaur Island. If you're looking for another dinosaur-themed game that has been out for quite some time, there's also Dinosaur World as well. I think Dinosaur Island is generally considered to be a little better. I've only played Dinosaur Island, so I can't really comment on the comparison of the two, but both Dinosaur Island and Dinosaur World will give you a whole lot of dinosaur-themed amusement park stuff and resort stuff, and dinosaurs eating you alive while you take various tours if you're looking for something else in the genre. And if you're looking for another game that also recently had, and Cretaceous Rails only has small elements of pick up and deliver to it, you do have to ultimately drop off things, so that is there, but it doesn't really feel as much like that. But another game recently that's not yet available, but probably available to late pledge or whatnot, Mistwind is another game recently that is very much focused on pick up and deliver, but in a way that I still found very rewarding despite it. And I guess it's not dinosaurs, but they did have gigantic flying whales to go with you as well. In any case, and until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you found this helpful, and as always, I hope you have a good one.